Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making Coast of Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. I want to thank you for listening on 103.1 or on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast. The feedback we continue to get on the show is just outstanding. We really appreciate people giving us feedback. And, we're able to get a lot of numbers from different, from podcast world, from YouTube, Facebook, especially Facebook. We get lots of demographic information from that. And of course, the radio numbers. And we appreciate you, joining us on a daily basis to catch up on what it takes to build a great community. I talk a lot about resiliency on the show, and I had been kind of saving a couple of quotes that I had gathered recently, and they kind of fit what I would say is the theme of Coast Vue, but it also fits the theme of a conversation I'll have in the second half of the show with my friend Laurie Jackson, who is a missionary from Ukraine. She'll be joining us from Ukraine here shortly to kind of give us an update on their efforts and sort of where they're coming from. But so all these quotes fit the world she's in, and they fit the world that we're in. This is a quote from Joan Baez, the singer-songwriter, and it said this: "Action is the antidote to despair. Action is the antidote to despair." You may remember when the going gets tough, the tough get going. We learned that really well after Hurricane Katrina, that the best way to sort of get ourselves out of the mess we were in is to take action. To me, at the core of resiliency is this notion of bouncing back and have people who are determined to do that. The next one is from George Foreman. He was born in 1949, incidentally. Seems like he's been around forever. I guess he has been. But he says, heroes always have their scars. Some you can see, and some you read about later on. I thought that was kind of powerful, and I talk about this all the time, that there are silent heroes all over coastal Mississippi. They care nothing about the spotlight. They're just doing amazing work in the trenches. And oftentimes we don't even really understand that they've made these contributions until something happens in their lives that brings focus to them, and then we can focus on that. But there are a lot of heroes around us. And then this was one of my favorite from Teddy Roosevelt, who died back in 1919. But Teddy Roosevelt said this: "Nothing in this world is worth having or worth doing unless it means effort, pain, and difficulty." I don't care if you're running a small business or running a big business or working in the community or, you name it. And I don't think nothing worth having was easy. You have to be willing to work hard for it. And oftentimes that means effort and pain and difficulty. That's just the reality of it. And the good leaders among us are able to overcome that and be resilient and move forward. And we are fortunate to have so many great leaders that fit that description here in coastal Mississippi. Okay, with all that said, let me shift gears now and move over to a leader here in coastal Mississippi that's not only doing a great job in his company, but has also contributed an enormous amount of his time to the community. And he's my friend, Jonathan Jones, who's the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Harrah's Gulf Coast. How you doing, Jonathan?
Good, Ricky. I'm great. It's nice to be welcomed with a series of quotes from some pretty significant folks that have lived. But I'm doing well, and we're already rolling in 2023. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, I actually want to reflect a little bit on last year and the holidays and what it means for you personally, and we'll get into that in just a second. But Jonathan, you've had the opportunity. You have done a great job, and we'll go into more detail about this in a second, about splitting, understanding that part of your responsibility, the more you work in the trenches of the community, the more you can do a better job as a CEO, because you understand the needs of the community. But whether it's through the business council of any other efforts that you're involved with, you get a chance to see what I'm talking about when I say there are some extraordinary leaders in this community that really aren't interested in getting attention. They're just out there trying to fill gaps and make this community bigger. In that respect, we're really lucky, aren't we?
We are. This is a fantastic community to live and work in. And I think one thing that we all share is optimism about the future. I mean, there's a lot of attention paid here on the past and what we've been and what we were and what it took to get where we are. But I think that, a vision for what we still can be and what's still out there for all of us is something that I think is kind of a common thread among a lot of us.
I've had some great conversations with Jamie Miller recently, and feel really good about where the business council is headed as we continue to do all the things that made us strong. But as we look to the future and think about the new economy, just as you were saying, and making sure that we're not losing the opportunity to take advantage of new things that can help build a better community, and also the competitive threats that we have across the country. But the Business Council being sort of the regional business organization, and under Jamie's leadership and the board, we got a bright future, don't we?
Yeah, we sure do. Really excited to have him here. We've been with him for now just a few months, but the executive committee for the Business Council is just a great group of people. I mean, and very diverse. I think just in terms of experience, in terms of industry. I was proud to have been kind of the sole member of the gaming and tourism industry on that for a little while, but I'm also happy to have Brandon Dardo from the Beau Rivage joining me on the executive committee, because we do represent a huge part of the economy down here, and it's good to be recognized that way. I mean, I feel very welcome, with the likes of John Hairston and Anthony Wilson, William Yates, on that committee. But yeah, it's a great group of people, and really excited about the future under Jamie's leadership.
Yeah, I was thrilled to see Brandon joining the group. I mean, we've referred to it before as the who's who of Coast CEOs. And I think one of the clarion calls that have made this organization work so well, I've said it many times on the show, is the fact that, oftentimes with an organization like the Business Council, it can get stale. And I'm not saying that that's happened in this case, but it could. And the reason it hasn't in this case is that we've got the top people involved. Oftentimes what will happen is top people will be involved for a period of time and then start to pass it to their first and second lieutenants and so on. But the work of the Business Council regionally is so darn important. That's why the John Hairstons and the William Yates and the Brandons and the Jonathans and you name it are staying involved, because you recognize that it's, if the Business Council doesn't take the regional view, then who's going to do that? And it's really, really important. We're the economic engine that drives this state, and we're going to make sure we stay that way. That's for sure. Hey, let's take a step back for a second. I'm just curious, as you look back on the holidays, what was Christmas like for you? What was going into the New Year's like just for you personally?
Yeah, it's great. My kids are just at perfect ages right now. They're 10 and 7. So that they get out of school and we get to spend some time together as a family. We traveled a little bit leading up to Christmas, but a few years ago we sort of decided that we needed to be home on Christmas morning, even though we've got family kind of spread out a little bit. So the kids woke up on Christmas Day and got to see their presents and play with them a little bit. But then we pack up and we head west. We went and saw my in-laws in New Orleans for the day and spent some really nice time with them. We had seen my side of the family a little bit before that. So we went to New Orleans for the day and then back here and really kind of gearing up for New Year's here. It's a big deal here at Harrah's, and we had a great time that night. So it was a good time, good to be together as a family.
Do you do personal resolutions, New Year's resolutions for yourself?
Yeah, I do. I mean, every year it seems like as we get from Thanksgiving to Christmas, I eat some things I probably shouldn't eat and drink some things I may not need to drink. So I try to clean that up a little bit in the beginning of the year. So combination of diet and exercise is going to be important for me to kind of kick off the beginning of the year. And then just reaffirm my desire to be present and in the moment with regard to my kids, but also with my coworkers here and also with our customers. I found, coming out of COVID and actually getting back together and being able to be together as groups, we made a couple trips with some guests. I went up to Reno in September with some customers and really just was present and with them and got to know them a little bit and had a really nice time doing that. So I want to spend some more time doing things like that here in 2023.
Yeah, I used to say, Roland Weeks, who was my predecessor at the Sun Herald and my mentor, he said a publisher wears 3 hats. He's a community leader. He's a newspaper publisher, which has First Amendment obligation that comes with that. And he's got the fiduciary responsibilities that come with, running a business. And to the extent that a publisher balances those hats appropriately. And, oftentimes they'll come in conflict with one another. And part of finding sort of the balance and the ability to live in the moment is the ability to sort of balance those 3 hats. That's kind of what you just described. It's when you're a CEO, you got so many different stakeholders and so much coming at you from so many different directions the key to success is finding balance. And you never really get it completely because anything can happen in the moment, in this exact moment that could change even this interview. But I mean, it's something you got to be focused on because family's important, and you got a young family, and it makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And look, I'm fortunate to be able to live here and raise them here. You know, a lot of other places you deal with a lot of other things that we don't have here. I mean, I feel like we're, raising our kids in a pretty safe environment. We've got great people around us, great schools. I mean, there's things that we don't have to worry about, so that when we can spend time together and focus on the important stuff, that goes a long way.
Now, in a conversation I had recently, I got to remember who it was with. They said that Michael Sunderman actually, I think, said it, that we could raise our kids in a bubble. Coastal Mississippi gives us the opportunity to raise our kids in a bubble. There's a lot of truth to that, actually. There really is. Hey, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Jonathan Jones from Harrah's Gulf Coast, and we'll talk about, how did 2022 go, and what are they looking forward to in 2023? We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I have my friend Jonathan Jones, who's the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Harrah's Gulf Coast. Before we go any further, Jonathan, why don't you kind of tell people what your role is? Explain your role for people who have not heard us talk before.
Yeah, so I'm basically, I guess, the CEO of this small business. So we are a full-fledged resort. I've got about 500 people that I work with. We've got 500 hotel rooms and 5 restaurants and great casino, a spa. We've got a relationship with Grand Bear Golf Course. And so my role as general manager is sort of, I'm in charge of all aspects of this as it relates to the finances and to the people issues, marketing. I got a great team here, the executive team here that I work with, and we work together to really, I mean, we all come to work. Every one of the 500 of us that work here share 3 common goals, and that is to exceed each other's expectations, number 1, to exceed our guests' expectations, number 2, and then to exceed the expectations of the business, number 3. So we just say all the time, if we find ourselves doing a bunch of stuff that doesn't fit in one of those 3 categories, we should question what we're doing.
So if you look back on 2022, we had some discussions during that time that, there was still a lot of carryover in pandemic, finding employees, filling positions, really having to rely on your team to fill in the gaps and all that. Thank God for dedicated teams. But when you reflect on 2022, what's sort of the bottom line for how the year went for you guys?
Yeah, it was a year of a decent amount of change. I'd say that right now in Q1 of 23, we're up against kind of the last quarter of kind of big, robust times. So things started to sort of dip a little bit for us in Q2 and sort of normalized a little bit throughout the course of the year. Fortunately, we kind of saw some of those trends coming, and we adjust the business accordingly. And that doesn't necessarily just mean take costs out of the business. We just have to work a little bit harder to get the revenues to come in. So for us, revenues were about flat, just like the rest of the market for the year. The composition of that revenue changes a little bit, though. And so, marketing incentives go up a little bit. We got to be a little bit more creative. And I won't bore you and get in the weeds with all the other differences between net revenue and gaming revenue. But, I'm really proud of the results that we had this year, proud of our team for sort of seeing trends shifting a little bit, making the adjustments that we needed to make. We're fortunate being part of Caesars Entertainment. We've got customers all over the country, many of whom we're introducing to this region for the first time still. And so, after the big merger with Caesars and El Dorado, we found ourselves with properties all over the country, over 50 properties, and places where, even right now, there's cold markets where people are dying to get down here and just looking for something from us, for an invitation from us to come down and visit. And so we met a lot of new folks over the course of 2022. A lot of them have become loyal, repeat visitors, and it was a good year. It was a good year for us.
That's great to hear. That's really good to hear. When you think about the coast market relative to other gaming markets, how are we holding our own?
Yeah, we are. And look, I think this goes back to how we reopened after COVID. We were one of the first states to be able to do that. And not only were we allowed to do it, but, from the governor on down, they really worked with us. It was an inclusive process to determine the best way to do it. And because of that, we met a lot of people for the first time, people who have become loyal visitors. And so, yeah, I would say we're definitely holding our own. Now, Vegas is really, really humming right now. They are, a lot of corporate spend, a lot of groups going out there that was sort of pent up demand that took a little bit longer to materialize. So Vegas is meeting some people for the first time right now. The Raiders have really brought some energy to that city. They've got a lot of big events all the way through November of 23 with F1. I mean, our properties out there are borderline sold out in November for this F1 event, which is, that's a sport that's really caught fire and folks are really getting behind. But, Vegas is different. So, we talk about Vegas and then we're talking about kind of the regional markets. And I would say of the regional markets, we're definitely holding our own here on the coast. A lot of reasons for that, but it's been good.
Formula One, the Netflix special series has really put a face and a name and a personality on those teams. I've watched every single one of them. It's been amazing the way that has taken a hold internationally, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cool. I think this, but one of my first jobs out of college before I got in this business, I was working for Red Bull energy drink right when it was first coming out. I was a salesperson and I was in charge of bars and nightclubs, and it was and still is a very sexy brand. And they're obviously a big force on F1 and they're fun to watch and fun to follow. So I had kind of that hook going into it, but yeah, I've seen most of those seasons and I'm a fan myself. I like that I can get up early in the morning. I'm up early anyway every day. And there's, you don't have to wait till noon or sometime in the afternoon or evening to watch a sporting event. You watch at 8 o'clock in the morning because it's overseas somewhere. So it's fun.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Raiders. It's incredible the way, of course, the new stadium, they got that built in really amazing turnaround time. The Raiders have come on strong. The team has struggled, but at the end of the day, what it meant for Las Vegas as Las Vegas was reopening, and because it was flat shut down. But as you know better than anybody, I've had many friends who have been there recently, and they love it as much as they've ever loved going to that city. But putting all these big events back onto the map the way that it's happened has really kind of brought things back rapidly for that place, isn't it? You refer to it as pent-up demand, but it's the convention capital of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, look, people, I think we're looking for an excuse to get out there. It took a little bit longer to get air travel going again, as opposed to us. We were always fortunate that, if you were a little nervous about getting on an airplane, a crowded airplane, you'd get in your car though. And so where that helps us and will continue to benefit us, I think people being able to fly now is really helping Las Vegas a lot.
So, Jonathan, speaking of flying, you guys have continued to sort of ramp up your charter service. How's that going for you?
It's great. It's great. So in 22, well, I'll back up a little bit. A normal year for us prior to the pandemic was we would do about 70 planes a year. And 22, we planned to do 220 or so. And then in the first quarter, we realized the plane we were using wasn't big enough. So we found a bigger plane, and we looked for every opportunity to kind of tweak that schedule. And I think this year, end of 22 and beginning of 23, we've done a much better job of going to colder markets, bringing people down. So our first flight of 23 gets in on Thursday, and they're coming down from Green Bay, Wisconsin. So,
wow.
We'll have folks from all over the country though that come down, and they get down here and they just start shedding layers, and our pool's heated and the hot tub's out there, and they like to look out over the Gulf of Mexico and have a daiquiri, and they're in paradise as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, Sonny Schindler told me about. Sonny Schindler's a local charter boat captain, and he told me that he had a group from that general area come down, and there was literally ice on his deck of his boat. He had to, clean it up, and he's not a cold weather guy. And he said they showed up and they didn't even have coats on. Man, it was 30 degrees because they're built different than us, aren't they?
Yeah, it's very different. But you mentioned charter fishing. That's something that we do a decent amount of, and so folks get down here and just want to take advantage of all that the coast has to offer that they can't get back home. They don't even get to see it. So
yeah,
they've heard about it, but they get to come down here and do all those things.
When I did some work when I was at Sun Herald, just some training up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I was there for a month or two, and one of the one Sunday or Saturday, I rented a car and drove into Wisconsin because, Brett Favre was from here. I wanted to see what that was like. Like the first gas station I stopped at in Wisconsin, there was literally a shrine to Brett, inside the gas station. And it turns out that's sort of the way it was all across that place. But it's a unique relationship the community has with that team. So your group coming down here are going to be depressed since Green Bay's not getting into the playoffs.
They had a chance.
Yeah, for sure. So as you look forward to 2023, what's your thoughts about this year?
Yeah, look, I mean, so I think the trends that we're seeing now are likely to persist. I think here on the Gulf Coast, we're a little bit insulated and immune from massive, swings in demand and macroeconomic factors. Because when people scale back a little bit, we become a more approachable destination. They'll trade out a trip maybe to Vegas or somewhere exotic to a place that they can get to and they're used to. So we expect the trends to sort of continue here at Harrah's. We're going to be moving some things around, rearranging some things, expanding the casino a little bit. We've got some underutilized space that we're going to take advantage of. So working with architects, contractors now to make some of those changes, and that with the eye on having those things finished, hopefully before Memorial Day weekend, and then we get busy for the summer and it should be a good year. We're excited about it. And again, the charter business, I think we're still learning. I mean, we're still finding new markets where people really want to get down here. And it's a fun, kind of nerdy thing to have to figure out, but you're optimizing demand on constrained supply of 183 seats to come into a 499 room hotel with other sources of demand. And, that's kind of right up my alley, all that kind of stuff.
I love that kind of stuff. That's how you build a strong business. I wonder, do you guys have internal metrics? Do you look at it this way, that as the pandemic was taking hold, we were working hard to influence the drive-in traffic, and what came from that was a lot of social swagger. Actually, I didn't realize when I was about to ask you this question that we're out of time. But the next time we'll talk a lot more about the drive-in traffic and how that influenced you, and how social media swagger is sort of picked up as a result of that, and the word of mouth and spreading the word about Coast of Mississippi. But for now, that's all we have time for. Jonathan Jones from Harrah's, it's been a great opportunity to catch up with you, my friend.
Great talking with you, Ricky. Thank you.
You bet. Laurie Jackson would be joining us from Ukraine after this break.